Hey guys, Desolator Magic here, and I finally did it. People have been requesting this. They wanted me to make another good Riddance video. Standard is about to rotate, and we're going to lose some pretty good cards like Metamorphic Alteration. Love it. But for every card that I'm going to miss, there are several cards that I am not. In fact, those cards can go straight back to hell. So please join me in this wonderful celebration of good riddance to these stupid cards that I am so sick of playing against, and so are you. Number 1, Search for Azcanta. Oh my gosh, this is such a degenerate piece of crap. I, at several points, pointed out that this is more problematic in the Teferi Nexus lockdown decks, or really any Teferi deck, than Teferi is. You can draw control at double the rate when it flips and twice as consistently before it flips. You can't just let people do that for 2. You can't do that. I hate this card. I hate the consistency it grants. I hate the decks it's in. I can't wait to see it go. Plus the price tag. Screw that too. Next up, Carnage Tyrant. You cannot do anything to stop this stupid card. It can't be countered. It has hexproof. There is no way within reason to stop this card, so normally it's just, okay, I can't get rid of the threat, but I'll chump it forever. Oh wait, it has trample. You can't stop this stupid card. And what dumbass forgot to put legendary on this? My record in my Simic Cloners deck is having 8 of these in play at once. What were you thinking, Wizards? Next up, highly controversial pick here, Settle the Wreckage, because this is the great equalizer to stupid, flooding, overpowered, I'm going to summon my whole deck, broken bullshit decks. You shut them down and shut them up in one single spell. Oh, you're at F&M playing against some immature dumbass and he decides to overswing because ha ha ha, I only need to hit you for 2, but I'm swinging with 20 because I'm so much better than you? Bye! There goes your whole line, asshole. Maybe you should learn to not overswing, you absolute raging dumbass. So while this is a great equalizer, and I love putting it in my decks and my sideboards, I also hate getting hit by it. People kind of stopped playing it lately, but still enough people play it that people have forgotten about it, they swing into it fully, and then they get nuked. And for those reasons, I'm out. So this card, it was a powerful weapon, but I think it's time to move on. Speaking of that, Star of Extinction. I hate this card. I hate everything about this card. I hate land destruction. The 20 damage is just stupid. It was obviously meant to be like a joke or something. And then people put it in degenerate land destruction loop decks with Memorial. This card can kiss my ass. I hope the dinosaurs all die regardless. And if you ever played this, screw you. Next up, Treasure Map. Hasn't really seen that much play lately, but when it did, it was just too much ramp, too much scry, too much consistency. It was in decks that didn't need it, stupid 3-color control crap. Then it moved on to like artifact count stuff and treasure count stuff, and I hate everything about this. This card needs to just go. Next up, Sanctum Seeker. Let me just throw into this also the entire vampire subtype from both of these sets, Ixalan and Rixalan. But this is quite possibly the worst out of all of them, because whenever a vampire you control attacks, even a token, each opponent loses 1 life and you gain 1 life. That is completely ridiculous, and once again, for some reason, this unbelievably overpowered ability was not given legendary. If your opponent gets 2 of these out, they can swing away every turn against any creature-heavy deck in the entire standard meta and still win. It does not matter what's on the counter swing. They will win every single time. Next up, Zakama, Primal Calamity. This thing was an overpowered disgrace, and it was only in a deck where you cheated into play. I mean, they think that, oh, well, it's a fair card because it's triple cost and it's 9. Nobody pays for the cost of this. You need to stop printing free casting bullshit, Wizards. Otherwise, I wouldn't be complaining about this card. There'd be nothing wrong with this. If you got it out, good for you. But everybody cheated it into play with the Thran Temporal Gateway, and then you had to deal with that gain 3 life 9 times per turn bullshit. Plus, Vigilance, Reach, Trample, really? Kiss my ass, Wizards. Next up, the Immortal Sun. Yes, I thought it was hilarious when they first announced it because it shut down Planeswalker decks. Unfortunately, it also makes people's creatures +1/+1 bigger, and that's annoying. And the double draw, I mean, at least they made it legendary. I mean, they did pull their head out of their ass for a couple of these. I mean, yeah, this is one where you look at it and you're like, yeah, I really wouldn't want to give people 2 copies of those. That's ridiculous. But then I would say that about pretty much every card that I've named so far. So if you run a Planeswalker-oriented deck, you're done. They drop this into play. There's nothing you can do other than remove it, and you probably can't do that without a Planeswalker. So I hate Super Friends. I hate the deck archetype. I hate playing against it. But whenever I play something with maybe like 10 Planeswalkers in it, this just completely screws me over. So bye. We won't miss you. Next up, Polyraptor. Pretty self-evident. They never should have printed a card that did this, and everybody read it and thought, I bet there's a way to make it go infinite. And then very shortly afterwards, somebody made it go infinite. Just another idiotic, careless design decision from Wizards. Next up, Tendershoor Dryad. Okay, you can't just give people free creatures every single upkeep on both players' turns. You can't do that. You're giving them 6 power and toughness every single turn forever for 0 mana, no tapping, no milling, no discarding. You just get free creatures. Once again, this should have been legendary. My record in my Simic Cloners deck is 7 of these in play. And yeah, it's a 2/2 for 5. It's really easy to destroy, but still, it doesn't matter. You should not let people have a card this powerful. Next up, one of the worst cards in all of Standard, Rekindling Phoenix. I would have to really try to think of a card worse than this, besides Scarab God. You just can't get rid of this. It's 4 damage in the air with haste, and you can't get rid of this. I hate this card. It's time for this piece of shit to go. Next up, Ghalta. Who the actual thought it was a good idea to print a 12/12 that costs 2? Oh, pardon me, a 12/12 Trampler for 2 mana, because you see a 12, but you might as well just erase the 10 because it's not really there. Okay, that 10 is bullshit. This card was a mistake. Shockingly enough, they actually did make it legendary. And whoever designed or approved this needs to be fired immediately. Next up, Zetalpa, Primal Dawn. This was only in degenerate stall decks and just shit that would naturally cast it for 8. They would drag the game out 30 turns and this was their win con. So Flying Double Strike, Vigilance, Trample, Indestructible. So how the hell am I supposed to get rid of this then, Wizards? It can't be killed in combat and it can't be destroyed with a spell. That is just too narrow for something this overpowered. It's just bullshit that you can't get rid of this. If it didn't have Trample, it would almost be an acceptable card. Next up, Time Stream Navigator. People are still, to this day, as of yesterday, I played against this, running this in an infinite loop. When a card says, take an extra turn, somebody is going to find a way to put it into an infinite loop, okay? This is worded specifically to keep people from doing that, and people still did it. Stop giving people extra turns, and the best thing is, besides that bullshit, this thing is a pile of garbage. It's a 1/1 for 2 that does nothing. Next up, Hadana's Climb, or mostly the other side of it. This is so ridiculous. A free counter for 3, which shockingly they made legendary. So, oh boy, kudos to them on that, but they should have also, after adding legendary, deleted the card and not printed it. And yeah, as soon as anything has 3 counters on it, you flip it, and then I believe, what do you, double the attack power and give it flying or something? I don't remember what's on the other side of this, but it's some bullshit. It's just the second this flips, you lose the game next turn. That's ridiculous. Oh, and did I mention it flips into a land, which means that there's basically no way to reasonably remove it? This card never should have been printed. Never. Next up, Journey to Eternity. Yeah, most of these were problematic. So when this flips, it lets you resurrect 1 creature from your graveyard directly to the battlefield, permanently, repeatedly. That should never be a thing. I was sick to my ass of Whip of Erebos, and now we get this horse shit. Plus, it's basically an Umbra. It makes me kill the creature twice. Screw this card, I'm sick of it. Next up, Mastermind's Acquisition. Do I even need to explain this? It's just broken. Your sideboard is your sideboard. You put cards in it for sideboarding, not, oh, here's my secret fetch pile. We're playing Yu-Gi-Oh! Now. This is my extra deck. What the f***, Wizards? I don't want to sacrifice my damn sideboard or 1 or 2 or 3 cards in it to make this work and then not be able to sideboard. Plus, this is such a ridiculously overpowered fetch card. You can get something from your library or your sideboard. That's just ridiculous. Next up, Kumena, Tyrant of Erazka. It's a 2/4 for 3 that has a bunch of free shit that's too powerful in a stupid tribal that's already too slippery to deal with. So, yeah, that's great. Put counters on everything, which makes them, by the way, FYI, unblockable in that deck. Hell, add the card that gives them unblockable for having a counter. I don't remember which card that is. Add that. That's an honorary mention. Tap 3, untap Merfolk you control, draw a card. So if you have 9 Merfolk, you can do that 3 times. That's nice. F*** you too. Next up, Nezahal, Primal Tide, the sole and only game winner in a blue or blue mixed deck that's all control. Great. And since it's all control, they can either just counterspell anything the target says or just keep bringing it back over and over and over and over and over. I hate this thing. I hate things that cannot be killed within reason, especially when they're gigantic and overpowered. Next up, Champion of Dusk, another wonderful vampire that says when it enters the battlefield, draw X cards, you lose X life, where X is the number of vampires you control. So that's a full-blown hand refiller in the most overpowered tribal in the game. Thanks for that, we super needed that. Oh, but that little downside of losing life will keep it fair. Just kidding, it won't, they have lifelink. Next up, Jade Light Ranger. I put this on her just because they were like $18. That's it, there's nothing wrong with the card. They just cost too damn much and I built a bunch of Explore decks, so Wild Growth Walker was the real problem. But like 18 bucks a card? Screw you. Next up, Profane Procession. For 3 mana, you can get rid of 3 things, and they don't go to the graveyard. And then you can cast them yourself. That's one too many and thens. Yeah, it costs 5, who gives a shit? 5 in today's meta, in today's standard, is basically 2 mana. In today's competitive standard, you have 5 mana available by the time you're done shuffling, okay? Recurring exiling removal, that also lets you retroactively steal shit. Why did they ever think that this was okay? The worst part is somebody throws this out and you know that no matter what you do, no matter what you top deck, no matter what you summon next, it's gone. It's already gone. They're sitting on 5. They drop this into play and you know there is no coming back until they exile 3 things with it, at which point they are going to throw them at your face and the whole time you have to defend whatever the hell else their deck is doing. It's so discouraging, it's so game ruining. They should have just said, this is not a fun card to play against, we're not going to print it. But clearly, Wizards has no concept of fun or what it means or enjoyable gameplay. That's not even a concept to them. That's not even on their radar. Next up, Teferi, Hero of Dominaria. I hope he drops dead in the storyline. If you built a prison lockdown control-a-thon shit show deck, I hope you die outside of the storyline. Next up, Muldrotha the Gravetide, one of the worst cards in all of Dominaria. You get to cast stuff from your graveyard once per turn per type. Yeah, you still have to pay for it, it's not free casting, but the graveyard is supposed to hold stuff that I already blew up. Not stuff that I want my opponent to bring back once per turn, because I don't know if you knew this or not, I don't have limitless removal spells. This card is so ridiculous, I hate it so much, it needs to be banned from Commander, it should have been banned from Standard, they never should have printed it. That effect is too powerful. Next up, Helm of the Host. Oh good, you can ignore the great equalizer that keeps the game fair at a basic level, the legendary mechanic. Oh good, this is basically Spark Double. This was like virtually unplayable in most decks because a 4-drop with a 5 equipped is ridiculous, and boy are you painting a target on yourself. But in the decks it was in, boy was this some degenerate shit. I don't know if you've seen it lately, but they put it in that stupid Kidnapper deck. You know, with that stupid 7 cost thing that steals all your shit? Yeah, screw this card, it needs to get out of Standard. It needed to get out of Standard a year ago. Next up, History of Benalia. Fun fact, they mentioned this card by name in one of the ban announcements saying that it was on their radar. So if you disagree with me that this should have been banned, Wizards disagrees with you. It was on the chopping block. So bare minimum 8 damage for 3 mana. Yeah, that's fair. Next up, Shalai, Voice of Plenty. Giving everything and everyone hexproof, so I can't target shit. I have to take this stupid bitch out before I hit anything else. What does Wizards not understand about making a deck and an archetype in a battlefield unstoppable? Like, literally unstoppable. There is nothing that you can do. I mean, oh boy, an untargeted spell, which none of them are good enough, there's no sweepers good enough, or a board wipe, which blows up your side too. So, whatever deck this is in, if you can't beat the creatures in combat, your options are as follows. And that's the end of the list. So yeah, this thing, good riddance. Plus the counters, that was going too far. Speaking of going too far, Thran Temporal Gateway. It's free casting. What the hell else do I have to say? At least they made it legendary. Next up, if you didn't see this one coming to the list, you might have some kind of cognitive impairment that you don't know about. Goblin Chainwhirler, the card that they failed to ban at 3 individual highly appropriate times. The whole cycle of these triple cost cards, every single one of them, all 5, were broken as shit and ban-worthy. This was by far the worst out of all of them. Giving it First Strike was a mistake. This would have been annoying but acceptable if it didn't have First Strike. But it does, and that was a mistake. Next up, Steel Leaf Champion, from the same cycle. Can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less, even though it probably comes out on your turn 2, their turn 3, where most of your creatures have power 2 or less. So it hits for 5 after costing 3, it isn't legendary, and the whole concept of this card cycle where, oh, but it only works in mono decks, doesn't mean shit because it works perfectly in mono decks. I mean, the fact that you can't kill this with a cheap sideboarded in 1/1 Death Toucher is completely unacceptable. And then they went and threw in a Veldrain and printed like 4 more of these that can't be blocked by power 2 or less. Great, thanks. Next up, oh baby, a triple, Tempest Djinn. The deck it's in is complete AIDS. This is way too powerful for a flying blue creature. The limitation is completely meaningless. This has no effective real downside. You should not be able to drop something in for 3 in blue and deal 12 damage with it on the next swing. That's ridiculous. Next up, Evra Halcyon Witness, a card that literally nobody played. I still hate it. It's still overpowered. It's still broken. And speaking of broken, okay, we made a video where I went over 4 billion life in Arena, and it completely borked the entire game. There was glitches and freeze-ups and negative numbers and shit. If that doesn't scream broken, I mean, we literally broke the game. Literally. Nobody played this because it cost 6 and it was too much of a liability. If they blew it up at the wrong time, you were absolutely screwed. But despite that, this is still too powerful and it still shouldn't have been printed. Next up, Nicol Bolas the Ravager. I cannot stand this card. If you have one way and one way only to deal with this because it's kind of late game, well, now you don't, because it just made you discard a card. You don't see it coming. It's not a discard effect that has a 1-turn delay. It just hits you, so you didn't know you needed to hold padding in your hand. And then he flips into one of the most broken, overpowered planeswalkers in the game, and he's in highly control-heavy colors. So overall, just screw this card. I hate pretty much every Bolas card that's ever been printed. Oh gosh, it gets better from here. Next up, Scapeshift, a money card that was not supposed to be playable in Standard. Unfortunately, they then printed Field of the Dead, a card that is an absolute disgrace to the game, and now Scapeshift is a game-ending super card. The funny thing is that that deck is so broken and Field of the Dead is such a bad card that you don't actually need to run Scapeshift in the deck anymore. You can just run standard land fetchers from the Gates deck. This was just, oh, let's put some money in a core set that nobody wants to buy. It's everything wrong with Wizard set design right now. Speaking of that, Omniscience. Oh boy. Yes, people have actually put this in standard decks. Yes, it is absolute degenerate ass. This is in the Jace run your own library out bullshit deck where you basically mill yourself and cast every single thing or put every single card in your hand. The game goes on forever. It's like 1-hour matches, and this deck is virtually unbeatable because it's 3-color control or more. And one of the critical components of it is Omniscience. Next is a Fate. Gee, do I need to say what was wrong with this? The price, the distribution, the idea behind it, how broken it was, the fact that they had to ban it, then they didn't, then they sort of banned it, but in the wrong format, then it ruined 2 more tournaments, then they refused to admit to it, and they still haven't banned it. Does that about sum it up? Next up, Chromium the Mutable, the one absolutely intolerable, unbearable bitch of a dragon. You cannot kill this stupid fucking card. It has flash, so in other words, it has haste. This spell can't be countered, so don't get clever there. It's flying, and it's 7 damage for 7 in really shitty colors that don't usually have good creatures. Well, 2 out of 3 of them. And then you can discard a card, and then it becomes a human with base power and toughness 1/1, loses all abilities, but it gains hexproof. Also, it can't be blocked this turn for some fucking reason. So basically, on the stack, as long as they have a card of any type left in their hand, you cannot destroy this. It takes a bare minimum of 2 cards and 2 effects to destroy this stupid piece of shit, while it's also a flash flying 7/7 that can't be countered. This is way too much evasion. Next up, the exact opposite, a card with 0 evasion. That's still a disgusting mistake and disgrace to the game. Gigantosaurus. It's like Steel Leaf Champion. Ha ha ha, you can only play it in mono because it costs 5 green. Nobody gives a shit. People put it into things, and it was a fucking nuisance. A 10/10 for 5 is so broken and annoying, it's basically player death touch. If this hits you, you lose the game. So if they strap wings to it, make it unblockable, give it protection from colors, which, by the way, is in the game right now, that's it. The game's over. And best of all, they put it in ramp colors. Thanks for that. So you can jump block this forever, but it doesn't matter because somebody's going to do something to make it not have these vanilla properties. Either that or you'll just run out of creatures. Next up, Leonin War Leader. This is borderline an appropriate card. I'm just sick of it. You're sick of it. We're all sick of it. In a life gain trigger deck and a Selesnya Flood deck, this was so stupidly powerful because before you could do anything to kill it, if you even could because it's a 4/4, you would guarantee them 2 more sources of life gain and 2 more creatures to the creature count. There is nothing you can do other than an instant speed removal to stop this thing, although it doesn't have haste. So besides that, okay, you have 1 turn to remove it until you just basically lose the game. This mixed with Banalish Marshal was fucking ridiculous. Next up, Death Baron, a horribly overpowered card that caught on once or twice during the standard meta. Oh good, all skeletons and zombies, the 2 creatures that can come back from the graveyard most easily, all get +1/+1 in Death Touch. So it's a Lord card and a Death Touch granter so that your creatures are throwaway already, but then also 100% effective in combat, and this is a 3 cost. And it's not legendary! I hate everything about this. Everything. You could board wipe the person and they'll just come right back. It doesn't matter. You could ram 15 creatures down their throat. They'll kill 8 of them. This was just too damn good of a card and they never should have printed it. The whole point of Death Touch, the whole concept of it is, yeah, you may have lost your creature, but at least you took down the opponents. But now it's a trade. It was a bit of a combat deterrent. Cool. You can't just strap Death Touch to a pile of creatures that they don't care if they die and they keep coming back over and over and over and then maintain the Death Touch ability turn after turn after turn. That's ridiculous. Next up, Patient Rebuilding, one of the absolute most annoying mill cards in the entire standard pool. If they took a survey and just asked people, what do you think of mill and should it ever be printed in the game ever again, they would get a really clear answer about what people thought about that stupid card. Nobody likes mechanics that don't let them play their deck at all. And finally, the last one on this list, because I fell asleep in the middle of making it and forgot where I left off, Demanding Dragon. Oh, so I get to let a 5/5 into play and take 5 damage, or I get to lose probably one of the only creatures that could stop it, or lose my major lifelinker against a red deck. Thanks for that. Oh, and then there's Dragon Synergy with Sarkhan too. Great. I'm sick of this piece of shit. You're sick of this piece of shit. I can't wait for it to cycle out. So that's about the shape of it. I would say for absolutely intolerable, overpowered ban bait bullshit that's left in standard, it's somewhere between a third to half this many cards. That's how unbelievably bad the design of Dominaria, the Ixalan Super Block, I guess you could call it, and the core set were. When they tried to shoehorn in a bunch of overpowered shit to make people actually buy M19, which they failed, M19's worthless. And then the overpowered cards in Ixalan, where they were trying to basically just shove them into other formats and turn the Ixalan blocks into modern masters, basically. Because that worked oh so well for Aether Revolt. And then you've got just the mechanics that were just carelessly play-tested and not designed well from Dominaria, all in a row. So, good riddance to this whole pile of 43 cards of pure bullshit. Hopefully Wizards grows a fucking spine and bans about 10 more cards when Throne of Eldraine comes out, including some of the cards from Throne of Eldraine. Asshole of Treachery and Cavalcade need to be banned. We know this. We know this. The whole community knows this. Why does Wizards not know this? So I'd say, yay, here's to looking forward to standard rotating and all this broken shit cycling out, but there's still too much broken shit still in standard, so this doesn't really accomplish anything. At least we don't have to play against these cards specifically anymore, I guess. So thanks for watching, thanks for requesting this, I guess. I don't know what the hell's wrong with you people, and I'll see you guys next video.